Hello, in this demonstration we're going to be using ArtCAM Express 2011. I'm going to show you a few things that you can do with this. So what we're going to be doing is creating quite a basic sign, and I'm going to show you how you can create this. As you can see, I've got a 3D PDF here. If I just zoom in a touch, you can see that I've created a texture over the top of the sign. We've also done some V-bit cutting, and we've also cut the part out. Now I'm going to show you how to do this. Here you can see the image in the center of the sign. That's going to actually be taken from a picture. So if I just close the PDF, and here you can see I have ArtCAM Express open. If you take a look on the far right side, you can see that I have no modules installed for ArtCAM Express. So everything that you're going to be seeing today is done entirely using the base ArtCAM Express. So this is the £99, €125 or $149 version of the software. So if I now go to Open Model, which is here, and you can see I have a picture here, which is a GIF. It's just a couple of elves. What I'm going to do is just open that. Now we can open bitmaps, JPEGs, any type of image files. This just happens to be a GIF file. So I'm going to open that, and when I open that, it allows me to set the model size using this dialog box. So I'm going to change the height of this because I don't want it to be that high. I'm going to change it to around about 450 millimeters, and I'm going to set the origin to be in the center by clicking there. If I click OK, here you can see it's opened up my picture. Now what I want to do with this is to basically trace around all of the edges. Now if I were to do this by hand, it would take me a very long time. So what I'm going to do is to use the Bitmap to Vector tool that we have within ArtCAM. Now the first thing that I need to do is to take a look at the colour palette down the bottom here. You can see, even though that this is a black and white image, you can see that there are lots of shades of black, greys and of the white. So I need to reduce these down because ArtCAM needs to know which colour to pick to trace around. So if I click reduce colours here, and here you can see I have a slider bar, and I can slowly bring that down, and what will happen if you take a look at the colour palette down the bottom is that the colours start to wash into each other, and that will be the same on the actual image. So if you take a look, you can see the colours starting to wash into each other. So if I bring that right the way down to two colours, you can see I just have black and white in this image. So I'm going to OK that. I'm going to select the black colour just so it turns into the primary colour here. And here you can see speckle size and smoothness. Speckle size is basically a pixel tolerance size. So if I were to, let's say for instance, just zoom in, let's say here, and if I were to create the vectors now, I would expect that to create vectors all around this. So if I just drop the contrast down, which is here, so you can see it's giving me some really nice vectors following around here. It's not following all of the pixelated picture, it's just giving me nice curves. So these are ready to be machined. If I wanted to, I could undo that. If I didn't want to pick up this part here, just change the speckle size. Let's say try 10, create the vectors. You can see it's still picking that up. Let's say try 25 and create the vectors. Now you can see that it's ignoring those particular pixels because they are less than 25 pixels. So it's basically a tolerance. Now if I undo that, and this time I enter a smoothness of 1 and create vectors, you can see that it's given me quite rigid lines. It's not giving me the smooth vectors that I had previously. So that's a value from 1 to 100, and the lower that the smoothness is, the more rigid and angular that the lines are going to be, the higher, the smoother or curvy that the vectors are going to be. So if I just set these back to the original values and create the vectors, just zoom back out, and then you can see it's created all of the vectors for me for that image. Now what I'm going to do is just move that out of the way for the moment. So I'm going to grab that and just move it over to the side here. Let's say around about there. Now this is where the vector tools module will come in handy. What I could do up here, I would have a vector layer that I could assign these vectors to, so I could just turn those off. I wouldn't need to move those to the side. I could just have them on separate layers, because they're going to get in the way when I'm creating my sign base here now. So I'm going to click off them, so there you can see they're just on the right hand side. Now if I turn this slider bar back up, you can see I've still got the picture on there. Now this would be with the Bitmap layers module. I could turn that off within the Bitmap layers. But what I'm going to do for this is to preview the relief. Now I know that there's not a relief that I've created or a 3D piece within there, so what I'm going to do is just click that and the image will go. So this would normally show any of the 3D work within the 2D view, but because I've not created any, it's not showing anything. So what I'm going to do now is to start creating my sign, and I'm going to create the vectors for it. So the way that I'm going to do that is to create a rectangle first of all. I'm just going to draw any size rectangle, and then I'm going to change the sizes over here. So I'm going to turn the width into 425. I can click preview if I want to see what that size is. The height is going to be 200. Click preview and it shows it me. The corner radii, let's try 25 and click preview. Now here you can see it's given me radii on the corners of this rectangle. Now I don't want them to go that way, I want them to be the opposite way, so I'm going to invert the corners. So there you can see it just swaps the radii around, and then I'm going to click create. I'm going to click here to center this in the model, so there you can see it centers that within the sheet. What I'm going to do now is to create a circle. So I'm going to do this exactly the same way. I'm going to enter a radius, let's say 150, click preview. Now if I wanted to not select here to center it within the model, I could just specify a center here. So I'm going to specify 0, 0 and click create. So there you can see that that's placed that in the center. Now I want to trim all of this off. I want to trim this part here of the rectangle and also that part, and I want to trim the insides of the circle off. Now I could do this using the trim tool, but it would mean having to click on 4 separate places and then having to join up all of the vectors afterwards. A quick way that you can do this is to select all of the vectors and then just come up to here to the World Vectors tool. And what this does, it automatically trims all of the vectors and then joins them up. So if I click there, you can see that that's trimmed all of the vectors for me and joined them all up into one vector. So if I were to select it again, you can see it's all one vector. Now what I'm going to do is to offset this vector inwards. So if I click here, this is offset vectors. Just move this to the side so you can see. And the offset distance is going to be 15 millimeters. And I'm going to do this inwards. I'm not going to delete the original vectors, and I want to make sure that this is sharp. So I'm going to offset that. Now that automatically selects the new offset. So what I'm going to do is offset that again by 5 millimeters and offset that again. So there you can see I've now got most of my base. Now what I'm going to do is create some text. So if I click here for create vector text, and I'm going to be using this Andalus font. I hope that I've pronounced that correctly. If you want to change the font, just click this drop down here, and you can see all of the fonts that are installed on your system. So whatever fonts are in your Windows fonts folder, they will be shown within ArtCAM. So there you can see all of my fonts. I can change the size of these. I can also change the spacing. So what I'm going to do is just do this at 40, and I'm going to type in shoe shop. Now this is looking a bit old worldy, so I'm going to click done, and I'm going to centre that. Now if I press Alt on the keyboard, I can just move that upwards, maintaining the orthographic mode. So if I just move that up to there, that looks fine, and I'm going to create some more text. This time this is going to be 12mm high, and I'm going to just create that anywhere, and I'm going to type in cobblers since 1835 and click done. Now with that still selected, what I want to do is to have that coming around here, so I want to place that around this curve here. So I'm going to press shift on the keyboard and then select the very inside vector there. Now if I select here for text, you can see on the bottom right I've got this little triangle. Now if I hold the left mouse button down, it opens up a flyout menu, and I can come across to wrap text around a curve. And what this allows me to do is to place that text anywhere around the vector that was selected. Now you can see that that's obviously on the wrong side. I don't want that to be on that side, so if I just click here for text on other side, you can see that that places that on the correct side. Now if I just zoom in so you can see this, what I want to do is to do this above the line. So you can see we have above line, baseline, centre on ascent, centre on strikeout, below line. So you have various options for this, and what I can do is if I just use this arrow key here, you can see that that's moving that up out off the line. So I'm going to do it to about 7. I can still move this around and it's still maintaining that curve. So if I move this around to about there, let's say, and you can see that the R and the S are just slightly touching. So what I can do with that is just change the spacing. So here you can see that that's quite large, so I can just bring that down, let's say to around about there, let's say, and I can move that back round into the centre. Now I've been moving the whole sentence. I can also move single words. So there you can see, just moving the 1835. Move that to around about there. Now you can see that there's quite a large gap between the 1 and the 8 here. So I'm going to select single letters, and I'm going to move single letters round. I'm going to move the 8, 3 and the 5 back round there. Okay, so that looks fine, and I'm going to click OK. Now if I zoom out, you can see the text done. I just need to do one thing with this shoe shop. What I need to do is to offset it, as I want to create the V-bit carving in between and create a border. So I'm going to select the shoe shop, go back to my offset tool, and the offset distance again is going to be 5, but this time I'm going to do it outwards. So if I select offset, and there you can see that it's offset my vectors for me, and it's created an outline of the text. So now what I'm going to do is to just draw a box around all of this text, and I want to group this together. Now this is not really important to do, it's just going to save me a little bit of time when I come to machining having to select everything, because I'm going to have a picture here and I don't want to pick up any of those little details in there. So what I'm going to do is just click here to group, and that will all turn purple. Now if I click off there, select it, you can see that it's all one entity now. So I'm going to zoom back out, and now what I'm going to do is to grab the picture of these elves and I'm going to resize it to fit within the sign base. So if I just draw the box around those, and I'm going to center that by pressing there, so there you can see that that's centered that on the sheet, and I'm going to click here for transform vectors. Now if I press Shift and Alt, it will maintain the aspect ratio, and I'm just going to grab one of the corners, move it down so it changes the size. Now if I just zoom back in so I can see the size of this, and I'm going to move it down a little more, let's say like so. Now if I wanted to move this, I can just do it with the arrow keys if I want to, so I'm just pressing the down arrow key. You can see that that's moving down. So I'll just move this down into place, like so. You can just click it anywhere on the screen and it will close the transform tool. So if I zoom back out, you can see all of the vectors created for our sign. So now what I'm going to do is to come into some 3D work now. Now I need to mention that ArtCAM Express, you cannot create any 3D work with this. You cannot create any reliefs. The only way that you can use any 3D within ArtCAM Express is by the use of the Relief Clipart library. So if I click here for the Relief Clipart library, what this essentially is a library of reliefs or 3D work that has already been created for you, and this is all included within all of the versions of ArtCAM, including ArtCAM Express. There are well over 500 pieces in here, and what you can do, you can use these in your models. So even though you cannot create any 3D work, you can use this 3D work to machine. So if there's anything in here, let's say for instance any animals or sign bases, crests for instance, if there's any that you like, what you can do is just grab those and bring them into your ArtCAM Express so you can machine them. So what I'm going to do is come down to textures, which is here, and you can see I've got a few textures in here. So what I'm going to do is use this crumpled texture. So if I click on that, you can see that it's given me a preview here on the 2D view in red. If I go to the 3D view by clicking here, you can see it's given me a preview of the 3D image, and this is in blue. If I go back to the 2D view, I'm just going to center that, so that's moved the clip art to the center. Go back, you can see it's moved it from the bottom left corner to the center. And what I'm going to do is exactly the same as previously, hold Shift and Alt down on the keyboard, and I'm just going to make this a little bit larger so it covers the whole of the sign. Now what I need to do is make sure that I change the scale of this. As you can see, the Z height of this is 5.5mm. Now I don't want this texture to be that high, I just want it to be about 1mm. So I'm going to type in 1 and click apply. Now if we go to the 3D view, you can see that that's dropped the texture height down dramatically. So if I click paste now and close the dialog box, you can see that that's pasted my texture down onto my relief. Now if I close the Relief Clipart library, and what I'm going to do is just click here to turn on the vectors from the 2D view into the 3D view. So there you can see, show me the vectors within the 3D view. Now if I select this outside vector, I'm just going to delete that because I don't need it. That's just the outline of the texture. And what I'm going to do now is start machining this. So to do machining within ArtCAM Express, if you click here under toolpaths in the project tree, then the bottom right you can see all of the toolpaths available to ArtCAM Express, or all of the toolpath options. And what I'm going to do is create a machine relief. So this is basically going to contour over the top of the relief. Now the area to machine, I'm just going to do this within selected vectors because I don't want to machine all of the outside here, be a complete waste of time. And what I'm going to do is select this inside vector here, and this is what I'm going to use to act as a boundary. Finishing options, if I click there, this opens up the tool database. Now all of these tools are already within the database. You can add your own tools to this if you wish. Let's say for instance you had this 16mm end mill that you wanted to add to this. You can just select that, copy it, and then just change the parameters within that particular tool. So I'm going to use a 6mm ball nose cutter, and I'm going to define the material. I'm going to set the 0 to the top, and the material thickness, let's say that this is 25mm in height, and click OK. So this is an inch thick, and I'm going to click calculate now. So this will calculate all of the toolpaths. I can also add a roughing tool to this if I wished, but because the relief was only 1mm deep, I'm not going to do that for this particular piece. So there you can see in red the toolpaths, and I'm going to right click on the toolpaths and simulate all toolpaths. And what this will do, it will give me a simulation of what I've just machined. So there you can see that that has created my texture for me over the inside area of the sign. Now I can add my vectors back to this. I can show them again by clicking there. So there you can see I can still see my vectors. And what I'm going to do now is to create some V-bit carving. So if I select that, and I'm going to select some vectors for this. So I'm going to select these two borders here, so both of the inside borders, and I'm also going to select the shoe shop that I grouped earlier. I'm going to select a carving tool, so if I come down to my V carving tools, I'm going to use a V-bit of 120 degrees and 32mm in diameter. So if I select that, if I click here for refresh, this will tell me the maximum width and depth of cut. So that's telling me that this is going to cut 2.8mm deep. If I wanted to, I could add a roughing tool to this if I wanted to create really large letters, let's say for instance, and I didn't want to rough all this out using my V-bit cutter, which would probably destroy the cutter. I could use a roughing tool to get rid of all of the material. And I'm going to click calculate now. So that's created the toolpaths for me, which are in red. I'm just going to click on the close. Now if I open up my toolpath tree, you can see the machine relief and the V-bit carving. If I wanted to turn these off, so I didn't see them within the 3D view, just click on the light bulbs here and it will not show the toolpaths. Now what I'm going to do is just select the cobblers and the image of the elves. I'm going to do some more V-bit carving for this, but this time we're going to use a much smaller cutter, and I'm going to add the start depth because I need to make sure that this goes below the texture, otherwise it will have areas that are not machined. So I'm going to select a carving tool. This time though I'm going to use a 6mm V-bit, and if I click refresh, again it will tell me the maximum depth. Take a little bit longer on this particular part because it's having to work out where it's going to go within this, all of these vectors here. So if I click calculate now, and this will give me my toolpaths for the small V-bit carving. I can turn those off again if I wish to, and finally what I'm going to do is just cut the part out. So what I'm going to do for that is to create a profile toolpath, and this is going to be along the outside. I can also do it along the vector or on the inside of the vector, and going to select a profiling tool. I'll just use the largest one that I have at 12mm end mill. I can add a lead in move if I wished. I could add a bridge to the start point so it holds the piece in place in the material. I can also add ramping moves so it ramps into the material when it's plunging. And I'm just going to click calculate now. So there you can see the tool paths for that. So if I just right click on the simulation, I can delete that if I wish, and I can just simulate all of the toolpaths. So there's the V-bit carving, and it's doing the small V-bit carving, and then finally cutting the part out. So that's given me my sign. Now I want to change the colour of this, and I want to send it to my customer just for approval. So what I'm going to do is select simulation, and I'm going to change the material to light oak horizontal. Click apply. So there you can see that that's changed the material to light oak. Now if I want to send this to someone, what I do is go up to window, save 3D view image, and I'm just going to save this within my folder. There you can see I already have one which I showed you earlier. I'm just going to call this test for the moment and click save. So what this is going to do, it's going to create a 3D PDF. So what you can do is send this to your customer for approval, and they will not need to have ArtCAM installed on their machine. They can just open this using Adobe Acrobat, and they will be able to just view what you're going to machine before you've actually cut it. Okay, so if I switch to my folder, here you can see the PDF that we just created. Just open that, and there you can see the PDF. I can rotate that around. Now you don't need ArtCAM to do this, or I can zoom in and out. So I can take a look at this. Let's say I want to see the surface. So that's quite a useful tool. So if I just close that now and go back to ArtCAM, I'm just going to show you how to save these toolpaths to send to your machine. So if I click on toolpaths and then select here for save toolpaths, you can see I've got the save toolpaths dialog box. Now if I had a tool changer, just move all of these tools over. Make sure that I've got the tool number set up correctly. You can do that within the toolpaths here. And then all that I need to do is to find my machine from the posts. So here are all the post processors available to ArtCAM. Now this is within ArtCAM Express, Insignia, Pro, all of the ArtCAMs. There are all of these post processors. Now there are well over 200 post processors within here, so the chances are good that there'll be a post processor for your machine. If not, we also have a genetic G code which may get your machine working. So if I click here for genetic G code, and I'm just going to move all of the toolpaths back. If you wanted to use a tool changer, obviously you just do all of the tools together. If you just got a single headed machine, you do one at a time. So let's say the machine relief, move that over and then click save, and I'm going to save this into my folder. Just call this number 1 and click save. Now if I go back to my folder, here you can see I have my G code, and if I open that up, you can see that I've got all of the G code ready to be sent to my machine. So I hope you found this demonstration useful, and hopefully I'll see you on the next one. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.